Welcome to The Truth in This Art, your source for conversations at the intersection of arts, culture, and community. I am your host, Rob Lee, and I'm excited to have you with us today. This episode is part of my media partnership with Baltimore Magazine. Shout out to them. Our guest today is an actor and the producing executive director of the Chesapeake Shakespeare Company, where she has overseen its growth into one of Maryland's largest theaters. We'll be discussing CSC's production of Joe Turner's Come and Gone, the great August Wilson play, and the Baltimore August Wilson Celebration. Please welcome Lesley Malin. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Rob, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for taking the time to talk to me.
Absolutely. Thank you for coming on. And, it's a good way for me to wrap up sort of my production week. And, as we're doing this and, it's that thing that I do with the interviews that I'm working with Baltimore Magazine on. When I reach out to someone, having that Baltimore Magazine sort of stamp on there, it's just like, oh, okay. Not only I'm good to get some interviews of my own, but having, some of these other folks, it's good. It's good. So before we get into the main topics of our discussion here, could you introduce yourself in your own words? I find like we have these like really breathy like artist statements and bios, and sometimes it's very simple. Sometimes we omit different details that could really shed a light on who we are. So if you will, introduce yourself in your own words.
Sure. I am a person who believes that theater is one of the most essential things, and that it makes the world a better place. And so that's what I have devoted my life to. And I did, I kind of didn't have a choice because my parents are both theater people. So I grew up with theater, and it's what I've done for most of my life. Although I did take off a few years in New York when I went into book publishing, which was fun and wonderful in its own way. And I loved my decade that I spent in New York, and I did spend half of that time in the theater as well. And I worked for the Lark Play Development Center, which was a really important new play development group that brought us people like Katori Hall and Rajiv Joseph and Dominique Morisseau, all of whom came through the Lark. So that was a place that I continued to work for another 2 decades. I was on the board after I moved to Baltimore. But I digress. I moved to Baltimore about 25 years ago, and I fell into the Chesapeake Shakespeare Company, which was a brand new infant organization. And I kind of fell in love with it and said, I want to help. And they basically said, okay, want to be the managing director? And I said, okay. And I'll do that for a year, and then I'm going to go back to New York, okay? And everybody was like, fine. And, life is what happens when you're planning other things. And so here I am today, still with the Chesapeake Shakespeare Company, which is a lot bigger than it used to be.
That's great. And thank you for it. And I like, the theatrical component there where you're kind of teasing a few things that we're going to touch on a bit further. So shout out to you. I like that. So this is going to maybe like add a little bit more depth to some of the stuff that you did mention earlier, as far as like some of those early moments. So what was your first theater related job?
Yeah, I saw that you teed me up for that, and I couldn't quite figure that out because when you grow up in the theater, you're always sort of around it, and so you wind up like, oh, you're going to be doing props for this show with your mom, or help your mom learn lines, or your dad is working on this show, and can you help paint the set?
Right.
So I couldn't even begin to tell you what my first official job in the theater actually was, but by the time I was in New York, I did, I was doing both acting and arts administration.
Sure.
But, acting in New York takes a whole lot of a very special kind of devotion and energy, which I did not actually have. And I decided that I I would be better off with my talents in arts administration. And when we moved to Baltimore, being a bigger fish in a smaller pond meant that I didn't have to use that kind of energy to, basically get cast in Baltimore. So I was able to continue doing both arts administration and acting, which I've really enjoyed and does make me a little bit unusual. Most people who run theaters aren't directors or something else. I feel like it's important to keep my hand in. It's great when I'm at Chesapeake Shakespeare Company and I'm just in the dressing room with everybody else, and I get to find out, who's fantastic in the dressing room, who's really supportive, who is losing their minds and why. I know this for the future, and that's kind of great. And it's something that I do for myself. It's a way to go back to the well, the creative well, and really look at what it is that we're doing from a different perspective, which is very different than that sort of high level viewing that I do as an arts administrator.
Thank you. That's great. And that's great to have that context and kind of sitting in like sort of both areas. I think it gives us a sort of a holistic view. And I say us because, as I touched on a little bit earlier, before we got started, actually, I've had this experience over the last year doing the education thing, like teaching. I'm still not 100% on it. I don't know about Professor Rob. I'm not quite there. Or my partner will say, "So how's your kids?" I was like, ugh, ugh. And but as they're learning, it keeps me honest and keeps me as a person that's working and doing a lot of stuff, in this podcast space to revisit things that I thought I became a master at, or helping folks as they're going along their journey and trying to tackle being a podcaster and so on. So it makes me more well-rounded and kind of not skipping over those things that are part of that path. And I just think it's something about it where, a lot of times when folks are reaching out and it's like, I've never taken a podcast class. Who's a podcast teacher? I'm one, I guess. So it's a new thing, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because when my son was very young, I did, my first play when he was about, I don't know, 15 months old, right? I hadn't done anything else really other than being a mom. And I did this play, and I just, I would come back after rehearsal and I would just be such a better mom because I had, I had been able to step away and just be myself for a time. And then it was such a better experience altogether. And I feel like in America today, with the professionalism of the arts, right? That I think we a little bit lost that opportunity for people to, play the piano, paint, paint a picture, because they're not perfect at it. They're not a professional. And I think that art has the capacity to expand all of our lives. Even if we're not going to sell that painting for $100,000, it's still worthy of doing. It still allows you as a person to exercise your creative powers. And I think that's so important. And I'm saddened that we've kind of lost that in society. And it's another part of the theater community that I worry about, that the theater community is very focused on who's professional and who's amateur. Who's professional, is this a professional theater? Is this a community theater? And, I think we're all doing the same thing. We're all just playing and pretending to be somebody else.
Right.
And I think we should be much more open and fluid with each other and have much more respect for the people who are doing it because they love it, solely because they love it. And they still have a day job, right, to make it possible. And so, I've spent my life kind of in between those sort of amateur and professional worlds. And and I just wish that we had a whole lot more respect for artists who are doing it purely for love.
Thank you. That is well said and such an important message too, because one of the key motivators in doing this podcast overall is extending the idea of whose art matters, who's an artist, who should be doing something, and I'll move to this next topic, but even again going back to the classes and the stuff I was teaching, I was trying not to sound like I was like tight about it or sort of quoting this idea, but literally I would say if you're going to make a podcast or you're going to make a series, think about it as, not just the first one, think about it as 10. What's those 10 episodes going to be? Are you going to be able to stick with it? Is it something that's kind of fleeting? Is it the thing that everyone else is doing and you want to ape that versus doing something that you might love, that you might be passionate about? And it comes from the soul because I feel the same way. Like this podcast came from my love of where I'm from and
Mm,
my defense of where I'm from and my curiosity and so
yeah.
on. And it's not just, hey, it's a bunch of guys talking to people in Baltimore about their work. It's like, you know. But I want to move into this next piece real quick. So it's kind of two short questions, I think. Um, how would you describe your work, your current role, and sort of, might call you the day walker if you're familiar with Blade or what have you, working in both realms. But how would you describe your work in one sentence? I have a part A or a second part to that question, but I at least want to give you that piece.
Um, Shorthand, I usually say I'm an artist manager or an actor manager is what I usually say, which is a 19th century role where there would be these, actors, and they would be, these wonderful actors, and they would also run entire theater companies. And that was pretty much how the entire 19th century worked. There was like a star who made things happen, and made an entire theater happen. I don't act nearly as often. I act about once a year now, but I still like to think of myself as an actor manager.
You can see it now in her annual performance.
Oh,
Uh-huh, uh-huh,
oh,
uh-huh.
oh, thank you.
Yes. I used to have a marketing background.
I appreciate that. I'm going to go pass that over to Jalen, our communications manager, and say, we have to have this next spring.
Absolutely. So the second part of this question is we have superpowers, right? We have these different things, these different skills that make us almost uniquely like ideal for the work that we do. What is that skill that you rely on most to be as, good at what you do?
A sense of humor.
Yeah.
I mean, I think mostly what I spend my time doing is talking to people and helping them figure out their problems. And so I think it's probably empathy and judgment.
Good. It's good. I was about to say, you spend your time talking to people. You should try podcasting.
Yeah. Yeah, but they don't come to you with their problems.
You'd be surprised.
Now that you mention it, let me tell you about in this situation with this cast, and they.
That's great. That's great. I usually come back for problems as well. I was like, look, we're just trading. We're just trading problems. So moving towards like questions around like Chesapeake Shakespeare companies, like let's talk about the mission a little bit. Like I've read that it's to create a joyful, accessible theater. How does that influence the productions you choose and your like community connections? Like I would love to hear about like different programs and some of the educational efforts.
Yeah, definitely, we've actually recently tweaked our mission, so which is more about, creating community through joyful and accessible theater. And that's definitely a shift. We've always been very focused on community, but now we're saying, hey, what we're doing is creating community rather than we're creating theater.
Sure.
So we have a lot of different ways that we do that. And that, so we've always had, okay, since we moved to Baltimore, we've always had this incredibly robust education program where we introduce middle and high school students to live Shakespeare and live professional theater. And so for many of our children, so last year we brought in 12,000 kids. And they either saw a production of Macbeth that we offer in the fall, or Romeo and Juliet, which we offered for 9 weeks last spring. And that production is either Romeo or Juliet is played by a Black actor, which is incredibly important for our city. We have so many kids coming in, and the actors come out and introduce themselves to the kids, and the actor will say, "I'm playing Juliet," and sometimes the kids will be like, "No, you're not. You could," and it's like, yes, yes, I am. So that is incredibly important, because for many, many of these kids, it's the first live Shakespeare that they've seen. It's a lot of times the first live play that they've ever seen, live professional play. It's really important to us to bring them to our theater, which is, I always like to say, the most beautiful theater in Baltimore, because it is my second child, and say, this place is for you. We are not coming to your cafeteria and doing half of a production. We are giving you gorgeous costumes, and you are, this theater is for you, and it was built for you, and here you are going to experience this amazing language, these fabulous stories, these exciting fights, and it's all for you. We're doing it for you, so that we hope that in the future that they look on this as a theater home, that they won't be scared the next time somebody says something about Shakespeare. They won't say, "Oh, that's boring." They'll say, "I remember going to see Romeo and Juliet when I was 13, and it was amazing." And they are the most fantastic audience, because we've got plenty of schools, who are with great teachers who have prepared them, and they've read it, and they've maybe seen a movie, and they know all about it. But then there are the kids who have no idea. They're from some really underfunded school. They don't even know why they're there.
Yeah.
And they're yelling back at the stage because they cannot believe that these things are happening. So they've fallen in love with Mercutio, and there he is, and he's dying, and he's joking, and they're laughing, and then he dies, and they're like, "What? What has just happened? No!" And Juliet is there, and they're like shouting advice to her, like, "Girl, don't do that." And then Romeo's there, and he's about to take the poison. They're like, "Don't." And then the show ends, and they're standing up and they're cheering, right? They had no idea what they were coming into. It's the closest you can get to an Elizabethan audience, because they don't know what's going to happen. So that's just amazing, and so important to us that we get to do that every year. We get to do this, and our actors just love doing it, and they get to talk to the kids afterwards and answer questions, and it's just so important and so core to everything that we do. We also fundraise so that we can bring in kids from Baltimore City public schools to be able to be bussed in and get tickets for no cost at all. So we got American Rescue Plan money for the last couple of years, so we were able to bring in as many as, I think, 4,000 kids for free last year. So that's amazing. We still need funding for next year, because the ARPA money is going away. So if anybody is listening and would like to give us, $25,000 to bring in another couple of thousand kids, we would be very appreciative. So that's kind of our education program. And then during the pandemic, we also, we were thinking about what is it that we're doing. And I was thinking about all of the people who come and see our beautiful theater, and all the students who come and see our beautiful theater. I was thinking about the tens of thousands of people in Baltimore who will never feel like they're comfortable coming to our theater, that coming to downtown is a kind of a hurdle for them. And so we started thinking about how can we go into the communities and start serving people in the communities where they are and offer them something especially for their park that's local to them. And so ever since the pandemic, we have been working really hard on what we call Shakespeare Beyond, which is just finished its second pilot year. So we have created a fabulous Shakespeare wagon, which is a truck, which kind of opens up the panel sides open up, and then we put out platforming, and they can go on top of the actors can go on top of the truck and into the truck, and we just drive up to a Baltimore City park. So we were at Carroll Park, we were at Middle Branch. Oh, I'm going to get it wrong. There in Cherry Hill at that beautiful theater, Middle Branch Park, Patterson Park, and then the Wyman Park Dell. And then we were also in Howard County, Baltimore County, and Montgomery County as well. So we were, I think, 9 different parks. We served almost 4,000 people with our, driving up with our little Shakespeare wagon, which is fantastic. And there are parks where we know that we are going to have to continue to show up year after year. But we are trying very hard to start to integrate ourselves into the community, to reach out to the community organizations that are there so that we are not like, we are a Shakespeare company and we are here to provide you Shakespeare and you may be grateful. We are not interested in that at all. What we want to do is somebody brought a crab feast this year, and we're like, fantastic, you brought a crab feast. And we have projects for kids to do before the show, and they made fairy wands for our production of Midsummer Night's Dream, and then they followed the Queen of the Fairy when she went on stage, and they were her sort of fairy train. So the kids from the community were actually part of the production, which was, they just had a ball doing that. So this is something that we hope we're going to expand even further year after year, that we'll have a second Shakespeare wagon, and that we will eventually serve every county in Maryland. So, one year we'll be focused on Western Maryland, another year we'll be focused on the Eastern Shore, but we will be bringing the same play to all of these different places so that rural areas and urban areas, poor neighborhoods and wealthy neighborhoods are all experiencing the same production, kind of like One Book, One Maryland. It's one Shakespeare play, one Maryland, because we believe it's something that everybody can share, and Shakespeare is for everyone is absolutely our motto.
I love that. That is robust. It's good work that's going on there, and it's almost a pun that's in my head about something to like get on the wagon. I don't know. It's just something about it. But it's great to be able to bring sort of what you all are known for and what you all are like passionate about to different communities. I think it opens up exposure to it. I think it even inspires perhaps the next generation of folks who want to work in theater, just that accessibility to it. So that's really great.
That's what we hope for.
So I want to move into sort of the last chunk that I have here. And this is all around, the August Wilson celebration. So let's talk about it. Can you walk me through some of the early stages of developing the celebration and things of that nature? It's some head shaking that's going on there.
It was an idea, and I was like, this is, I can do this. This won't be a problem. And the more I've been working on it, the more I'm like, this is so much work. I cannot believe I have done this to myself. But I have done this to myself. So, I'm running an entire theater organization, and then I decide to do a little program, and it just balloons. So the Baltimore August Wilson Celebration is a collaboration among 9 theaters in the Baltimore theater community, to produce all of the great American playwright August Wilson's 10 plays that he wrote, one for each decade of the 20th century to do them all in chronological order, with a different theater producing each play. This has, well, there have been a number of theaters, including Center Stage, that have done all of the plays. They have never been done in chronological order. And it has never been an entire citywide kind of celebration or festival. So that's what the celebration is. And we've been kind of knocked out by how enthusiastic people have been. And it started out with my thinking that we should do August Wilson at the Chesapeake Shakespeare Company because he is a truly great playwright, that he is a playwright on par with Shakespeare. And so wouldn't it be great if we did all of the plays? And then I was like, that's kind of a lot. And then I went and talked to Vincent Lancisi at Everyman Theater, and he's like, I was like, well, maybe you guys would want to do this with us. And he's like, you need to talk to arena players. And I was like, oh, I need to talk to arena players. You are so right. And Arena Players is, of course, the amazing Baltimore institution, the oldest continuously operating African American community theater in America. And I started thinking about this, and I thought, well, it would be so cool if we had a different theater doing each production. And I was excited by that because Baltimore is a fabulous theater city. We do great work, and we have wonderful theaters on all different kinds of sizes and ranges, but we've never done anything really together. We are, each theater does its own thing, and very often, like, actors only work for Everyman or only work for Center Stage or only work at Fells Point. And, there's a little bit more fluidity among the do-it-yourself theaters, but still, it's still very siloed. And so I thought, well, if we could all be working toward this common goal and support each other, this would be a way for us to do something together and break down some of those silos and support each other. So I first went to Donald Owens of Arena Players, and I said, hey, I've got this idea. Would you guys want to be interested? And he said, well, and I did this in September of last year, and he said, well, we're going to be doing Gem of the Ocean, which is the first in the cycle, next spring. And I said, oh, wow, next spring. Well, that gives me 6 months. I can pull something like this together in 6 months. Sure. Okay. You're in. And he said, yeah, we're definitely in. And then I'm like, okay, next I've got to get Everyman or Center Stage on board. And so Stevie had just started at Center Stage, and he came over to see our theater and meet me. And he's like, what could we do together? And I said, have I got something for you? And he's like, I love it. We're in. I've been dying to do King Hedley II. I'm like, fantastic. You've got it. I'm like, okay, I've got them. And now I got to get art-centric. Art-centric because it's Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, and that they should be doing that. And so I finally meet with them in November, and they're like, yeah, this sounds great. We're in. I'm like, great. Okay, I've got it all working. And then my artistic director, Ian, wanders in. He's like, have you talked to their estate? I'm like, ooh,
Ooh.
no, no,
Ooh.
I haven't. Like, yeah, maybe you want to do that. Then, yeah. So I find out who it is that I need to be talking to, which is August Wilson's widow. And I find somebody right away who gives me her contact information. And right away, her assistant gets back to me and says, oh, I'd love to meet with you. That's great. And I'm like, fantastic. And it's like the middle of December. And Gem of the Ocean is going up in April. And so I'm like, I still got time. This is great. And then I don't hear from Constanza, who for another month. And then finally we have this conversation in the middle of January, and she's like, that's very exciting, but she is lovely and supportive and warm and enthusiastic, but she is very cautious of her husband's reputation. And, she's like, I have to go think about this. And so she goes and thinks about it. And I'm like, any news, any news, any news? And finally it's the beginning of March. And I'm like, I need to know. I can't go forward. They're opening in 3 weeks. And so she finally says, yes, I give you my blessing. You have to call it a celebration. I'm like, fantastic, we will call it a celebration. And I go into overdrive. And so fortunately, I have a good friend of mine who was a New York publicist, and he was the publicist for Hamilton. And so he's, on my side, and he's working on, getting the press to know about this. My young marketing associate is like, I will make a website. And so we start, and I'm like, okay, we have to have a kickoff celebration, but poor arena players, they're trying to put on this whole play. They don't have time to plan a party. So my assistant and I plan a kickoff party 3 weeks into their show at somebody else's theater. And so we have to, and we're inviting everybody in the nonprofit community to come to this kickoff celebration, kickoff event. And I was just so moved by how many people beyond the theater community showed up for this, which was fantastic. The other part that I was really worried about was making sure that the theater community knew about it, that they didn't hear about it sideways, and they were like, well, why wasn't I invited to be part of it?
Right.
So the Greater Baltimore Cultural Alliance hosted a Zoom and invited everyone so that I was able to tell everybody about it and say, if you're interested, contact me. So that is, see, I've been talking about this a lot, so I just said that all in one ridiculous stream of consciousness, vomiting of information. I'm sorry that was
Oh,
too
no,
much.
no, 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 no. Like from what I was hearing, it went from like, I got an offer for you to all of these different folks in the theater community, almost like, I want to tell you about the Avengers Initiative, the August Wilson Celebration Initiative. Come on in, come on in.
Yeah.
And the process behind, not even the actual acting and the adaptation and all of that, but more of the pre-production component of it. Like I've gotten so much more respect for seeing how other people bring their stuff together. Like, you know, I run into it on occasion, but I'm able to kind of navigate it and so on. But it's sort of, you have a vision and it's a really good idea, and the work that goes into to making it happen. That's the thing that often we don't see right there. We just see the end result. We don't see how the pasta is made, or the sausage. People are vegans. I don't know, but it's sort of getting that background. So thank you, and you kind of helped me eliminate like 3 questions.
Yeah,
So
I don't know, because I think it's better when it's like you and me talking back and forth at each other. So I'm sorry, I've been used to like being interviewed by reporters, and I forgot about that back and forthness. So it's all on me. But I will say that it's just been so positive, the response to this. It just makes people happy that we're doing this. People in the theater community are happy. People outside of the theater community are happy. It was just like a good idea, and somebody just had to do it. And so, I mean, it was almost like I was forced into it, because I was totally willing to I was giving up. I was like, this is not going to happen. And I had a friend, and she was like, are you really going to give up right now? Shouldn't you make one more effort to reach out to Mrs. Wilson and see? And, I was like, it's not going to happen. And then, but I'm so happy that this is actually happening. And I'm so proud of the theater community for coming through, and being there for each other. It's really, it's heartwarming. That's what it is.
absolutely. And just when I think we're at our best when we're working together, when we're working collaboratively. Like Baltimore is a like city is always in this cycle in my head of like developing or what have you. And I have these conversations with artists from all different cracks and crevices within the city. And I find that when I hear the collaboration, when I hear folks getting along, it feels so much better than, well, I got mines and I want to hold the silos and such. And I think when we're able to operate together, work together, and the communication is there, it's a beautiful thing. And I think it gives for much more allowances when something may be it may be a bit stressful, if you will, or it wasn't the perfect thing. It's not supposed to be perfect, but if the intent is there and people are connecting and working together and having fun and feel like we like this, you're supposed to like the things that you do and in the time and the effort you're putting into those things. So no, I love it. It's, as you said, it's heartwarming.
Yeah, yeah. I do want to highlight a couple of our partners who are smaller organizations, in particular the Angel Wing Project, which they're just 5 years old, and they reached out to me and said we'd really love to be part of this. And I just was so impressed by Angela, their founder. She had just produced her first August Wilson play, and she really wanted to be part of this. And she's just been a fantastic partner, and I'm just really excited to give her, a slightly larger stage to work on and get some additional support from the other theaters in highlighting her organization. And then Noah Silas, who's a local filmmaker, and he said, I want to help, and I want to film everything that's part of this, and I will do that pro bono for you. And maybe we can have a documentary afterwards, but I will be part of this. And also I'd like to produce the last show of the festival. And I said, okay, let me introduce you to Theater Project, that because it's, you haven't done this very much, and Theater Project should be part of this. And they've got like much more of a foundation. And so they're working together to close out the festival, in whatever year that is, that winds up being. But I'm very excited to give opportunities to these partners as well.
Absolutely. And shout out to Noah. He was on his podcast earlier in this cycle. Actually ran into him recently at Artscape.
Oh,
And I was like,
yep.
you remember me? He's like, brother, you look the same. I was like, I've had some changes, sir. Um, so I got two more questions I want to ask you. And the sort of the place that Chesapeake Shakespeare Company is playing, you guys are doing a production of Joe Turner's Come and Gone.
We
So
are.
let's talk about that a little bit. What was the and this is the second stop, if you will, on the circuit. So talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, of course, it seemed right for Arena to be the first, and of course, they already were the first. So I thought, well, in order to get this thing off on a good footing, we should do the second one, because then I can have like total control over, this is going to happen, and I can nag, all of the other partners to help support. And when things aren't going right with the celebration and the host theater, it's on me. So basically, the first one was just scramble. This one is, let's see if we can set how it's going to actually be going forward. We'll see. But the other thing about Joe Turner's Come and Gone is it's more of a period piece than, say, some of his later plays. And it was said to be August Wilson's favorite play of his own. So I like to feel that. And it's a really devastating play in a lot of ways. It's about a man who basically was enslaved for 7 years in Tennessee, and has been released, and goes home and finds that his wife is gone and she's left their daughter. And so he goes on the road to find her. And he winds up at this boarding house in Pittsburgh, which is full of different people who are coming and going. And thanks to those people, he is finally able to deal with the trauma that he's experienced. And as the play puts it, find his own song. He's able to find himself again. He's able to find his soul, basically.
It's great.
which which has been totally shut down by the trauma he's experienced. So it's a beautiful play, but it's also about this community, right, that comes together to support this man and and give him the opportunities to heal himself.
And I think that that's a theme or series of theme that would resonate with ear with sort of the community in Baltimore. I think that it's right there. It's right there. This is smooth. I like that. I like that. I'm seeing it. I was like, oh, because I was writing down the questions. I was like, this seems like, because I was gonna go hokey and like Pittsburgh. Nah, I won't do Pittsburgh here. It's Baltimore. And I was just like, no, no, but what's the theme? And yes, the theme in my head, it definitely connects. And I just see it here. So it's very, very timely. I think it's always timely in that regard.
It's always timely. And of course, August Wilson in Baltimore is, like Shakespeare, August Wilson has started to transcend maybe the niche that we looked at him as is like the first great African American writer. Instead, he sort of belongs to everyone. But when we started rehearsals, and so like obviously I'm looking at August Wilson as an admirer, as a white person going into rehearsals for Joe Turner's Come and Gone. I was so moved by how much pride and emotion was in the room from the Black cast and creative team, that I did not properly understand, how much ownership and love for August Wilson that's in a different place than I have for him. And so it's quite a privilege to be able to witness that and to be able to facilitate it a little bit.
That's great. That's great. And again, I think the benefit of, as I like to say, you let the guests cook. You get all of your questions answered. So actually, you answered my last question. So I can now move into the part that everyone looks forward to, the rapid fire portion.
Please don't have pop questions. I'm very bad at pop culture.
No, no, no. Well, you're good. You're good. I think you'll be good. I think you'll be fine here. I've been updating them as we go along to make them more bespoke for the guest.
Oh, bespoke. Okay.
So I got three of them for you. And the key
Oh,
to this
three.
is
Okay.
you don't want to overthink them.
Okay.
So here's the first one. And it relates to it. And I know you'll notice it because, you got a sense of humor, as you said, is your skill. If you could change one thing about, let's say, I'm using the term industry, but let's just say about the theater community for sake of argument, with a wave of your fairy wand, what would it be?
Significant government funding for theater.
It's a great and well thought out answer.
I've been thinking about this one for a long time. And, everybody's complaining about, oh, well, if only the government would support, then all of our problems would be gone. And we're in America and we know that the government is not going to, so we have to come up with new solutions. So if I can get that fairy wand, I would like it very much. And that's what I would use it for.
100%. I love that. So this one I put in recently. I have this book, No Idea is Final, and it's just a bunch of quotes in there that I'm like, okay, let me investigate this. I'm curious about it. Is there a quote or lesson about creativity that you love personally?
Oh, see, I just looked up and I'm seeing this quote that I wrote down from that I saw recently, which was use the difficulty. When you've got like some sort of monumental challenge, use that challenge to make it interesting.
It's good. It's good. I'm going to apply to see whenever I ask these questions and even the whole podcast, it's been a clever ruse for me to get insights and information to make myself seem more interesting. That's all this podcast is.
I love it. Very wise of you.
So here's the last one, as you touched on when talking about Joe Turner's Come and Gone. What is your song?
Theater can change people's lives.
It's good. It's a good point. And that's it. That's the rapid fire. See, off the hot seat. No one got burnt.
You were going to be asking me what's your favorite Shakespeare play, or yeah.
See, I was being nice because I had a question about Shakespeare film adaptations. I was going to ask you.
Oh, see, I had the answer to that.
Okay, what is it?
I'm a Kenneth Branagh's Much Ado About Nothing girl all the way, all the way.
Okay, then you got it. So you had a bonus one somehow. So like blood from the stone, as it were. So
Hardly, hardly. Not people like me who talk.
I want to wrap up on with these two sort of final things. One, I want to thank you for coming on and spending some time with me this afternoon, leading up to the production. Just right in it, you're just deep in it. It's been a busy time for you, so thank you for making the time. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to really the sort of like the hard sell, the soft sell, what have you. Tell folks where to check out, Chesapeake Shakespeare Company, anything along those lines. When the play is ready, all of that stuff. Any detail you want to share, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Chesapeake Shakespeare Company is opening Joe Turner's Come and Gone. August Wilson's great play about the Great Migration. And we open on Friday, September 20th, and we run Thursdays through Sundays until September 20th. We have all sorts of fantastic events that are happening around this. We have a blackout, black only performance on the Thursday before we open. We have the August Wilson Society is coming and doing a talk before the performance on October 12th. And on the 5th of October, we are doing a special seminar workshop for teachers called Teaching August Wilson that our dramaturg for the entire celebration, who is a professor at Howard University, Khalid Long, is going to be teaching. And then there will also be cast talkbacks and director talkbacks as well. But those are kind of the big things that are going on. And I'm really excited about this production. I encourage you to go to ChesapeakeShakespeare.com to get tickets. But you can also look at the entire Baltimore August Wilson Celebration online as well. And you can see all of the shows that are coming up and all of our wonderful partners.
And that website is bemoreaugustwilson.org. I see.
Thank you for remembering that because I was completely stalled out.
Thank you so much. Podcaster. I don't know. And there you have it, folks. I want to again thank the great Lesley Malin for coming on to the podcast and telling us a bit about the Chesapeake Shakespeare Company and the Baltimore August Wilson Celebration, including CSC's production of Joe Turner's Come and Gone. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You just got to look for it.